Hi everyone, welcome back to the next diecast. For today's video, I'll be showing you and reviewing these 1/18 scale 2021 Ford Broncos made by Maisto. So as you can see, Maisto does actually make two different versions of the new Bronco, which actually just was released recently. So you have the Bronco Badlands and the Bronco Wildtrak. And Maisto kind of makes it easy to know which one is which. So for the Badlands, they went with no doors and no roof. And on the Wildtrak, they include the doors and the roof. Now, of course, if both these trucks were real, they would both come standard with the roof and doors, of course. But I kind of like how Maisto sort of went with this kind of decision, I guess, in terms of producing these models. They have the two different trim levels, and they kind of go beyond a little bit by having one version have no doors and no roof and have one version with the doors and roof. So I think it's kind of cool that they did that. Now, each of these models comes in two different colors. So the Badlands comes in this really cool orange. It's called, I think, Cyber Orange on the real truck. And kind of a light blue called Area 51 Blue. And the Bronco Wildtrak that Maisto makes currently comes in bright red. I think it's called Race Red. And then this dark blue called Antimatter Blue on the real truck. And I've seen, it looks like Sam's Club currently has the Wildtrak available in the silver, which is called Iconic Silver on the real truck. I think that's exclusive currently to Sam's Club stores, but Maisto might make that silver be a part of their regular catalog, I guess, for this model come 2022, but we'll see if that happens. I think it's cool how they've just released these models, and already you have two different body styles and 6 different colors. I think that's very cool that they offer that variety. So you can currently find these models at wholesale clubs such as Sam's Club and whatnot for between $15 and $17 if you happen to be a member of any of those. And you can find these elsewhere online for usually between maybe $30 and $45 or $50. It looks like Amazon is just starting to have these models become available for sale. And I think for $15 each, these were absolute steals. And even for, the $30 to $40 price range, I think these are good models overall. So we'll go ahead and get into the details of the models here. And I will compare, I guess, the features that each of the models has. But a lot of the details are exactly the same, but some features are different because, you do have the two different trim levels. So I'll get to that kind of as we go along with the review here. We will begin up at the front of the models. We'll take a look at the Badlands just for context. I think Maisto did a great job with the LED look to the headlights and just the overall kind of retro round look that they have too. They're nice and flush with the body. There's actually no pegs in them either. It looks like Maisto's kind of doing away with pegs in their headlights, which is very nice to see. Kind of gives a little bit more of an upper end look, I would say. You do, of course, have the Bronco Inscription going down the center here. It does kind of pop out just a little bit. Of course, these aren't like separate letters from the grill or anything, but they do a nice job of them, I think. Now the front grille here, it is not like a fully perforated piece. It's just kind of a flat. Well, it's not flat. It has kind of a textured mesh pattern to it. But it would have been cool if they had done actual like holes in here or some perforations maybe. But I think what they have there looks just fine. Very nice bumper down here. It's actually very tight. It's not loose or anything like that. Looks like you get a couple of tow hooks down here too. And looks like a few like rivets and stuff down here too. So I think Maisto did a good job with that. The paint quality on all versions of these models, Maisto just nailed. They look just like the real paint jobs on the real trucks. The Bronco comes in a variety of colors, and Maisto kind of imitates that with their models. As I said, they already are offering these in like 6 different colors, which is just awesome. Some are metallic and some are not. In the case of these two, they're both kind of a metallic color. Everything is just nice and smooth throughout. You can see kind of that sparkle, especially on the orange Badlands here. And this antimatter blue actually has even more of a sparkle in certain lighting. You can really kind of see like the dark blue like from this angle and everything. Just both paint jobs are just very well done. There's no, paint bubbles or any like rough areas or anything like that. Just very smooth and well applied throughout both models. So that's very nice to see. Now, once we take a look at the size of the models, this is where you'll begin to see the differences. Aside from the obvious lack of doors and roof on the Badlands, you do have two different styles of rims. So on the Badlands, you have this kind of 6-spoke silver pattern. Maisto does do a nice job with that. You also see the disc braking caliper back there. Nice kind of thick, beefy tires too. They do a nice job with the silver trim along the wheel here. And you do get a little tiny Bronco badge in the center there. Of course, you do have full steering. It's actually very good steering too, and it actually stays in place. A lot of these budget models that have steering, it just kind of, you know, snaps back like that. But on this one, it actually does stay in place when you do steer it. And of course, you do get full suspension too, which is also very good. Nice and smooth. It's not, you know, noisy, or it doesn't jam up or anything. Same thing on the Wildtrak Bronco too. Just very good suspension and very good steering. Now on the Wildtrak, you do have the all black rims with these Sasquatch tires, which are bigger tires than you would see on the Badlands. It looks like on these, Maisto actually made the rim smaller and kept the tires the same size. I think the ride height on the Wildtrak should actually be slightly higher than the Badlands, just because it has that like tire package on it, but they're actually the same height, at least for the models they are. I think if these were real, again, this would have the bigger tires and it'd be a little bit, I guess, of a higher ride height because of that. But at least Maisto got the wheel styles right and everything. I think, you know, they're not going to spend extra money to have it to 2 different sizes of, you know, tires and everything. But on the Wildtrak, they do a nice job with the 6-spoke black rim on here. And of course, on here, you also do get the Bronco badge in the center. Nice detailing with the lug nuts there. You do actually see the brake disc and caliper a little bit less on here because the spokes are a lot smaller than on the Badlands. And the disc brake does not move with the wheel. It actually stays stationary, but that's pretty much what happens on most of these Maisto models anyway. At least they have the detail there and everything. And you do have badges on either fender of both models. On this one, you do have the Wildtrak badge along the side here, and you have the Badlands badge on the Badlands, of course. And a cool feature of these Broncos is that the mirrors are actually mounted on a single piece that goes across between like the windshield and the hood. I think that's a really cool touch. I think the real Bronco is like that too. Of course, on the real one, these mirrors would kind of fold in, but I think that's kind of cool how Maisto sort of made that as like a single piece. That means these are actually very sturdy because they're kind of mounted on one kind of strong, kind of like a rubbery plastic piece too. It almost feels like the real mirrors, which I think they did a good job with. The wipers look decent. Of course, there are some obvious like attachment stubs on there. I wish they kind of did maybe a little bit of a separate piece look to these, if that makes any sense. They're kind of molded into the windshield a little bit, but I think what they have is okay. And on both models, you do have the tube steps, which are options on the real Broncos. Taking a look at the rear of both of these models, you'll see that you do have the Ford badge on the lower left side of this rear door, and they actually do have separate handles for the rear door handles too, which is nice to say. And on the Wildtrak, these are actually separate door handle pieces too. And these actually blend into the paint very well. I thought this would be like kind of just a painted on or like an embedded like metal piece, but they're actually separate plastic pieces. A lot of times they just kind of paint them on, but on here they actually do them as separate pieces. So that's very nice to see that. Maisto does a decent job with the taillights back here. They're missing some, I guess, finer details, but I think what they have there looks good overall. There's no pegs to be seen. They're nice and flush with the body. You do have, I guess, the turn signal slash reverse light in the center of each of these lights here. And you do have the Galloping Bronco badge on the right side of the rear door, or tail. I'm not really too sure what that's actually called. And on the Wildtrak, it does actually have a blacked out appearance to the badge back here. I think that's really cool. And it is accurate to the real Bronco too. And you do have this this rear brake light above the spare tire. It is just painted on, but it's so small that it would be kind of hard to make as a separate plastic piece. And on here, you do see the Bronco inscription on this roll cage, which is a very nice touch. And of course, you do have the full-size spare tires back here. I actually used the spare tire on this one because this tire was originally on this wheel, but it was kind of ill-fitting. It was kind of stretched out a little bit and it didn't really look that great. What I did was I actually pulled off the spare tire and I swapped it with the tire that was originally back here. And speaking of swapping, I think these would be very good candidates for wheel swapping. And you could easily just unscrew both chassis of both these models, and you could put the Badlands wheels on the Wildtrak and put the Wildtrak wheels on the Badlands. But you do have to keep in mind that the spare tires are kind of hard to get off. I'm actually almost afraid of pulling these off, so I don't even know if I'm going to bother with that. But if you're into projects, getting both of these models and kind of, doing wheel swaps, I think would be kind of a good project. Now, in terms of opening features, of course, on this one, you don't have the doors because there are no doors. But you do have the opening rear door and the opening hood. So we'll take a look at the rear trunks on these models first. Now, this one's pretty simple to open because you can just put your finger in there and push it. On the Wildtrak, it is a little bit of a challenge because you do have to kind of grab the tire itself and kind of gently pull. And these doors are actually on kind of strong spring-loaded hinges. So they don't open all the way, which is kind of annoying because on the real Bronco, of course, this would open all the way. I'm kind of a little bit disappointed about that, actually. On both Maisto's Jeep Wranglers, it kind of has a swinging door in the back, which are not on spring-loaded hinges. They're just kind of on regular hinges. But on these, they do spring-loaded hinges. I mean, they are very strong, and I guess on one hand, that's good. But on the other hand, it would be nice to have these just open kind of all the way. So that kind of makes it impossible to see in the back of the Wildtrak. You can kind of see that trunk liner just a little bit. So I'm going to take a look at the trunk in the Badlands just because it's visible from the top. So they do a decent job back here. There is a liner that you would see on the real Bronco. Kind of has a nice texture to it too. A different texture from the rear seats here. And on the inside portion of the door, there are some vents and stuff back here, which would be on the real Bronco. I think that might be, yeah, it looks like they're both vents. So I don't know if that's actually like AC or what, or if it's just maybe drains. I'm not too sure about that. But this is on both of these rear doors. So that's nice to see. I forgot to mention that Maisto actually does do a great job with the roof on the Wildtrak. It is actually a separate plastic piece. It's not removable. I'm sure you can find a way to remove it, but I haven't been able to find a way. So if anyone's actually been able to get it off, just let me know down in the comments below. I'm pretty sure it's like screwed on or something. But you do see the roll cage. So Maisto did include the roll cage, even though you can't really see it too well. I think they must have used like the same mold and they just kind of inserted the roof on this version. But the roof has a nice texture to it, kind of like a flat vinyl plastic, like you would see on the real Bronco. And it looks like you can actually open this rear window back here. The Maisto does a really convincing job with these top hinges. Of course, you can't actually open it, unfortunately, but at least it looks pretty, you know, realistic. So yeah, that's pretty much it for the rear trunks. You do have to be careful when opening and closing both these doors. I have heard that this actually kind of bends a little bit, so I don't open it too often. You just kind of have to grab the tire and just lightly close it like so. And again, it is a very strong piece, which is nice. But on the other hand, I wish it would just open all the way. I thought it did, and I was kind of taken aback at first. I was like, wait, it only opens up like less than an inch. So I thought that was very strange. But, you know, once again, at least the hinges are strong and everything. So we'll go ahead and close that up. Next, we'll take a look at the engine detailing. The engines are identical on both models, so we'll just look at the engine on the Badlands here. We'll open up the hood. The hoods are actually held shut by these handles on here, which is very cool. If you turn the models upside down, the hood does not fall open because it's actually held shut, or clipped shut, I should say, by these handles, which are actually on the real Bronco as well. And it's kind of hard to open a little bit, so we'll go ahead and open it up like so. Maisto, I think, did a decent job with the engine in here. It is a three-dimensional piece. It's not... It looks like they're kind of moving back towards doing the multi-piece three-dimensional look to their engines. There just isn't really that much coloring in here at all. There are kind of different textures in here, which is kind of strange. You see there's kind of like a rough texture with this pipe here. You kind of have a glossy texture with this pipe, and you have kind of a matte sort of texture. It's hard to describe. So they made a decent effort in here. You just can't necessarily see too much coloring in there. It's definitely a multi-piece engine, and Maisto did do a good job with the overall look of it. This is the EcoBoost V6 that you get on the real Bronco. As far as seeing down to the bottom, you can see just a little bit, but not too much. There's a little like hole down here, and you can kind of see a little tiny bit. So definitely better than Maisto's recent engines compared to their other models that they've recently released in the last few years. But they definitely have, I think, older models that have better engines in them. But I think for the budget price range, you know, anywhere from $15 to $45 is what you can get these models at now. I think it's a decent, you know, detailing job in here. And the engine piece itself is very tight. A lot of these budget models, you have kind of like a wobbly or loose engine piece. That's not the case in here. It's actually very tight. Same goes for the one in the Wildtrak too. And you do have a fully painted underside of the hood here. Wish they kind of did a plastic liner, but maybe it doesn't have a plastic liner on the real Bronco. I'm not too sure about that. We'll take a look at the interior detailing next. Of course, on the Wildtrak, because you do have the doors do open like so. I did forget to mention, on the hood of the Wildtrak, you actually do have this kind of matte black paint feature on here that does say Wildtrak on it. And the real Bronco Wildtrak does have that, and it looks really, really cool. And if you get the silver version or the red version, it really stands out, and it looks awesome. On the Badlands, it does have that kind of hood lump. I'm not really sure what to call it. It's not really a hood scoop, but you get the point. It doesn't have any kind of, and that's true to the real Badlands. But on the Wildtrak, you do have that kind of Wildtrak inscription and that matte look to it. So very cool. So we'll take a look at the interiors of the models, and they are identical, except of course on the Wildtrak you have the doors, and therefore you do have the interior door panels. So we will take a look at those first. They do a nice job with the overall look and texture of the door panels here. You do have a speaker down there, and they do actually paint the door handles silver, and you do have a couple of buttons next to that door handle. And of course, the door panels themselves are actually nice and flush with the door. They're not, loose or anything like that, and they are aligned well too. And there is actually a nice texture too. You kind of see a little bit better on this side here. Yeah, there's like that kind of like leather or vinyl texture, and there's the door handle too. So we'll take a look at the more fine detailing with the Badlands, because it's much easier to see inside this because it is an opened up truck. I think Maisto did an excellent job with the overall look and shape of the seats of these Broncos. They have a nice texture to them. They are the right size and proportions compared to the rest of these models. You do actually have the seatbelt buckles, and a kind of interesting thing is that they mold the seatbelts into the size of the model here. It looks like it's actually a separate piece, but this is actually molded into the side panel. It is actually a different texture. The seatbelt kind of has like a separate vinyl texture. It would have been nice to see them have actual like separate seatbelts in here, but at least they make the effort of putting it in, I guess, molded into this plastic here. But again, it would have been nice to have them as separate pieces, but I don't think that's a big deal. Same thing with the rear seat back here. They do a nice job with the overall look and shape of it. You do have the two seatbelt buckles down here. These trucks do seat 4 people. I'm not sure about the 4-door versions, if they seat maybe 5 or even more than that, but at least on the 2 doors, they do have a 4-passenger configuration on the inside. You do actually have some buttons on this center console here. This will be the driving modes, this kind of round knob here. The shifter's actually a little bit loose. I just realized that. Might have to pull that out and glue it back in, so watch out for that. And then you do have some more buttons in front of this armrest here. That might be the window controls. I'm not too sure, but I think Maisto did a good job with detailing those buttons there. And speaking of buttons, you do have many more buttons and the GPS screen on the dashboard here. You can see that they do a nice job with labeling those lower buttons on there. They're all separately painted and separately labeled, which is nice to see. And you do have the GPS screen that's turned on. Not too sure what it says on that map there or what this section says here, but the real screen does look like that. You have the kind of menu controls on the left side. So I think Maisto did an excellent job with that. And on the dashboard, you do have the Bronco Inscription. Although I believe it should be maybe silver on the real truck. I'm not too sure about that. And on some versions of the Bronco, you do have kind of a 2-tone interior option where the seats would have like maybe brown inserts, and then the dashboard would also have a brown insert. Maisto usually doesn't do that on their models. They usually just go for kind of one single color for their interiors. Would have been nice to maybe see them take an extra step further with both of these models and maybe offer up and maybe have a 2-tone interior for the Wildtrak and this single tone for the Badlands, or vice versa. It would have been kind of cool to see that. Have like a 2-tone in the Badlands and have kind of the single black interior for the Wildtrak. But again, they are budget models, so you're not going to see too much finer detailing like that. Speaking of fine detailing, on the steering wheel, they do include a lot of fine detailing. You have a nice kind of silver trim going around it and that Bronco badge in the center here. All the kind of steering wheel controls that you see there too, they are each separately labeled. So I think Maisto did an overall great job with that. And last but not least, on the interior, you do have 2 pedals because this is the automatic transmission. Kind of hard to see the pedals, but they do have a nice texture to them. I may actually paint them silver just to kind of make them stand out a little bit more on both of these models here. But overall, I think Maisto did a great job with the interiors of these models for sure. And the build quality, the very good build quality sort of continues. Like the seats are very tight. You could probably pick this model up like by the seats. And this whole roll cage is very, tight on the car. So we'll take a look at the undercarriage. And kind of an interesting feature down here, Maisto actually, instead of doing the chrome exhaust pipes, they did a painted silver exhaust pipe and this muffler back here. They usually just do all chrome and it doesn't look that great, but on here they actually painted silver, so it kind of has a slightly more realistic look to it, I would say. So I think they did a good job with that. And you do have some detailing. You have like the rear with like the differential back here, and some engine detailing kind of popping through a little bit down here, which they maybe colored it in a little bit more, but I think what they have down here looks just fine. So if you can find either of these models, or both of these models for that matter, for a good price, I would say definitely get them. I think they're worth getting for your collection. These really do look good. I think Maisto did an overall great job with the overall detailing and with the overall build quality on both versions too. And honestly, I would recommend getting both versions, because they're different enough that you can get, you have the different wheels, the different trim levels. Some details are identical, like they do have the exact same engines and the same kind of interior features. Aside from this, of course, you have like the interior roof and like the door panels and like the doors and stuff. But overall, I would say that Maisto did a great job with the details on both of these models, and I would recommend getting them for your collection. As always, feel free to comment down below with your thoughts on these models, and don't forget to subscribe. Thanks for watching.